So I just decided to make a video showing how I'm doing this as well, besides just showing you it actually after it's done. So basically, I started off with a reusable element. I have the width on this. I'm going to set it out to 300. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a text element into this. And I'm just going to make that also 300. And I'll put the height at 40 and the X at 0 and the Y is going to be at 40. I'm going to make sure that the style is set up appropriately. I'm going to put it in centered. I'll put it to 1. I'll center the text. I'm going to make sure that it never has a margin of any less than 20, so it's always not going to hit the sides. This is the title. And so within this, I'll go ahead and add a button right down here. I'm going to just say cancel. And let's make this button 120 by 40. And let's set the value at 20 here, and we'll put the Y at 100. Okay, so inside of my responsive settings now, I'm going to just take a look at this and set it up. So responsiveness, this wants to be left. This is always going to be centered. So you can see here, if I start off at the original width of 300, how it looks. And when I stretch this out, it continues to go further. Okay, I can add a little bit more in here to help you with visualizing things. Put this group down to here. Let's make this group so that it is a color. And let's do flat color so we can see it. And now that I'm on this, I'm going to go ahead and put that at 280. I'm going to make the height 40. I'm going to put it at a Y value of 10. Let's do 150. And so this group, I'm going to allow it to stretch out. But with this stretch, I'm not going to let it go all the way. I'm going to actually make it so that there is going to be the max width. And when I do this max width, I'll go ahead and set that off to 200%. So it's going to stay centered as well as be able to stretch beyond. So when I bring this back down to 300, you can see how it looks, and even further down, and then stretching it all the way out and how that's working on it. Now, what I could also decide to do is say wrap this to previous line of stretch. It's going to move it right up. You can see how it gets moved to the cancel button there, and I'll just bring that down. And so here we go. Okay. When we get down to the values, the reason why this is up here, even though it's less than 300, is because of this minimum width setting. And it's really a shame that Bubble does not give us the ability to do 100 on here, because then we can make much better use of the existing responsive engine, which for me personally, works fine, and I can get any type of responsiveness I want. So here, going here like this, right, you can see what this is going to look like if it is on the small and on the large. This is just within the reusable element. So if I come on, I'm going to add a page here. So let's say responsive RE demo. I'm going to create the page. When I make this page, I'm going to make the page so that it is 1200. And let's just keep the height at that. I'm going to uncheck fixed width. And now I'm going to get that reusable element, the RE300. I'm just going to drop it onto the page. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to center it. But I'm also now going to change the width. I'm going to set the width to 600. I'm now going to center this again. And when we preview this in responsiveness, you can see how that looks. Okay. If I bring it down, right, it still has the same responsive settings. And if I preview this page, because it is originally set on the page itself to be at 600, instead of its original setting on the reusable element of 300, then it's going to actually have it set up in that way. So you can see how that looks now. So if I come back in here and I do another one, and let me just try to move this out the way so I can work with Bubble. I'm going to click on add new reusable element. So let's go ahead and add another one. Let's do this one at 1200 px. So when I create this out, I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to start it off at 1200. Okay, I'm going to add in here a text value. I'm going to make this thing stretch all the way across. And let's go 0. Let's go down to 40. And let's make sure that we get this set up properly as well. So center it. Let's get the line spacing, center it vertically. Let's say that this is a title. I'm going to make sure that this is not fixed width so that it will actually respond. And then I'm going to put a button down here. And this button, I'm going to set it off at 140 and 40. Let's go to 20. Let's put it at a Y value of 100. And now I'm going to grab a group, and let's put this group down to here. Seems like Bubble decided to let me draw out more than one, it looked like. All right, let's get this width. I'm going to set this width out at, let's say, 1020, and let's do a height of just around 40. Let's change the color on it and make that also a red color. And let's get this a little bit closer over to here. So that's what, 140, 160. So let's go 180 on that. And let's get it at 100. Okay, does this stretch all the way across? It does. So I want to get it a little bit less. Let's just do 1,000. Okay, I'm going to set the min width at 0. And so let's come down into the responsiveness and see what happens when I start moving it. All right, so you can see how that's going. I'm going to now set this to be on the left-hand side. So when we move that, now that's going to look basically exactly the same as the other, except this one got started off at 1,200. And so now when I come back onto that page, that is the responsive one, if I can remember, there we go. So here's that first one. I'm going to now add in the next one, and let's get this down. Let's drop that on the page. I'm going to go ahead and change this width to 600, and let's center that horizontally. Okay, so here we've got one at 600. Here's another one at 600. When we preview this page, let's see how they work together. Okay, so this one's stretching out because I didn't set the max width on it. So when you set the max width and the min width on here, it is not associated with the original on the reusable of 1,200. It is based off of what you've given the value to here. So if I put a max width on this at 100%, it will not allow it to stretch beyond 600, and it's going to completely ignore the original setting of 1,200. So when I come back into here, we should see these things as looking pretty much exactly the same, except this one's now over there. So what I would be doing here is coming into my responsive settings, and I want to make sure that this is going to be center aligned instead of right, as Bubble for some reason decided to place it as a right alignment. So now these look exactly the same. And if I'm inside of the editor and doing the responsiveness and seeing this, you can see how they function pretty much exactly the same, except this one has that min width. So let's put that to 99%. Obviously can't do 100%. I could say it's fixed width, but I don't want to. So a little bit of how you do responsive design and reusable elements and being able to manipulate things. Now this is just a little bit off because this one has it at 20 instead of 10. So if I just want to come back into here and make that quick change, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit over. And what that means is I'm going to just set it so that it's just 10 away, and I'm going to add 20 to here. And so when we come back onto that page itself, what I should be seeing is things being very similar to each other inside the responsiveness. This should have changed over. It seems like it didn't for some reason. Not really sure why that's not happening, but you get the idea overall about how it's possible. I think maybe I didn't center this. How it's possible to essentially make sure that when you're building inside of a reusable element, not just for adding features and things, but also considering your responsive design, you can make sure that if you do it correctly inside of your reusable element and then you set the things properly onto the page as you want them to be, things will function just fine.